Welcome to the Hockey Writers What's Kraken, a weekly show with our top Seattle Kraken writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from the first ever puck drop to their future rivalries, our team covers everything that happens with the Kraken. So sit back, relax, and get ready to find out what's Kraken.
Welcome to the THW What's Kraken show, hosted by me, Tom Pepper, Sean Raggio, and Adam Kierszenblat. Presented by the Hockey Writers, we talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on YouTube, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at Tom Pepper, at Raggio9124, and at Adam Kblat. So we have a familiar guest joining us again this week. Canucks writer and our actual show producer, Matthew Zator, is with us. How are you doing, Matthew?
Doing good. Hockey's back. Preseason is getting going, so it's awesome.
Yeah, and we had a great game last night. How are you guys, Sean and Adam?
Adam, you go first, buddy.
Well, it's been a day. We had one of the we had just the skies opened up. I work outside, so I was drenched. And then I was stuck in traffic for an hour, so it's been fun. I'm going to propose a law here that I think that everybody should adopt, and that is that if one lane is turning into like a bridge or a tunnel, and then you come up the other lane and you cut in right at the front, you should instantly get like 6 months in jail. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I don't have time for the people who try to like pull up to the front of the line and then like wave you down to let you in.
Stay out of New York, buddy. Oh my God. You deal with that all the time. Getting on like the what's it called? The Cross Island to the LIE. Oof, it's brutal.
I thought that nobody drove in New York. It was just taxis and Ubers basically.
Oh, not on the island, baby. Not on the island. Oh man.
How have you been, Sean? How was your week?
Week's been all right. Hung out with some friends this past weekend for my friend Robbie's birthday. Just, today was Monday. Tomorrow is the most irrelevant day of the week. So it's a pretty tough back-to-back, but snapping around with you beauties is always a good way to end my Monday. So Tom, how you been?
I've been doing well. Nothing much going on this week. Just been working on school, getting my stuff done. And, we had preseason hockey yesterday. So that was extremely exciting. So we'll get into that now. Our first topic. So last night, the Kraken came back to defeat the Canucks in their first ever preseason game. They were down 2-0 after the first period, and by the end of the game, it was 5-3. So it was quite a thrilling game. It honestly didn't really feel like a preseason game, at least to me. And I don't think the players, at least on the Kraken side, were treating it as a preseason game either. It looked like they were given a great show there for the new Seattle fans. So I will go to Matthew first on just what did you think of last night's game? And yeah.
Well, the Kraken had their NHL lineup pretty much. The Canucks had one line, maybe two. I mean, Besser, Hoglander, and Patan was their top line. And then Dickinson, Klimovich, and who else was on that line? But that line, and Di Giuseppe. There maybe minus Klimovich probably would be the third line. But I mean, for a game, it was actually really good. But I mean, for the Canucks, it was a little bit mismatched. And everyone's freaking out on Twitter too. And Canucks losing to a basically an NHL lineup, and they basically don't have their full team. So. But it was a good game. It was exciting. The Kraken had I thought had a really good forecheck, and they were on the Canucks all game. So, I mean, they were outshot quite a bit for the Canucks side. So, but I mean, for the game itself, it was actually really fun to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned how the Kraken had quite a few more NHL players in the lineup. So in the end, you mentioned shots on goal. Kraken had 38-15 shots on goal in favor of them. So it was quite one-sided in that stat line. But I'll go to you next, Sean. What did you think of last night's game? Is there anyone that stood out to you? What were your thoughts?
It was a great game. It was so fun to watch. That was the key for me. Like, I admittedly never watched preseason anything, spring training, nothing. But I watched this and it was fun. And that was something that is huge for the team. Not even just the fact that they won. They could have lost that game. And just the fact that they were fun to watch was huge. I I've had times where I used to produce some live sports where, we'd plan to talk about someone and, like, let's say we talked about a goalie and he got a shutout. Well, he makes you look right. That's a great feeling. Nathan Bastian's making me look wrong right now, saying he's not going to crack the opening night roster. I want to make, we got to figure this out as a collective team. If that becomes a line, that 13, 14, 15 line, the early teens line, whatever you want to call it, Nathan, he is making a case. That line was so fun. Riley Sheahan did make me look right a bit, I will say. I had him penciled in, but geez, that I couldn't take my eyes off them when they were on the ice. You had guys throwing a body and they had a beautiful goal. It was the first goal in, preseason, first goal in Kraken history, right? Like, oh, they stood out a lot to me, written down. I think Morgan Geekie too. Morgan Geekie, he was noticeable whenever he was out there. I thought he played a really strong game, and yet he had two, if I recall, correct?
Yeah, 2 goals in the third period.
Yeah, one that went off a guy. So
yeah, still he's coming through when it matters. Third period.
that was an own goal.
Hey, it's not like soccer. He still gets his name on it though. So
True.
yeah, overall I think that was great. Being that they're dressing a lot of guys, it's different than a team like the Canucks where only a couple of their guys were going to be on that main roster anyway, or were on the main roster last year. So it's really going to be tough to get a read as to who's going to be making the cut, even when, even if they play well, some other guys may play better. It's going to be a bit harder to judge, I think, for us, who's going to end up making that final cut.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you bring up Riley Sheahan, of course, who scored that first preseason goal in Kraken history, and guys like Ryan Donato. They both had goals last night, and these are guys who we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. We're just coming in on these 1-year deals and just, they're depth signings. But clearly, Ron Francis is, it's one preseason game, so we can't look too much into it. But first impression has been pretty good on them. So I'll go to you next, Adam. What did you think?
Well, I know it is just the first game of the preseason, and if you are a Canuck fan, it's expected because Vancouver got absolutely lit up in the very first game that they played against Vegas.
Yeah.
In the preseason. So you know what? At this point, it's just tradition that they lose to the expansion team, first game of the preseason. But there are some concerns here when it comes to the offense, particularly. I know that they generated a lot of shots. That they absolutely wiped the floor with Vancouver in shots and chances. But we have to remember that the goalie on the other end is Arthur Silos. He's going to be potentially the backup in the AHL. And the only time that they really got pucks after him is after they hit him in the neck and they kind of threw him off his game. So, yeah, they scored 5 goals, but they should have scored more against Arthur Silos, who's going to be the backup in the AHL, or maybe even in the ECHL, depending on how they want to do that, and Connor Martin, who will take the other position, whatever one they decide against Silos. So there is a little bit of concern. The fact that they couldn't generate goals 5-on-5 really stuck out. But they had three of the 5 goals were on the power play, if I have my information correct.
Yeah.
Like I also don't know what was going on. They were getting a lot of power plays, it felt like. When I was looking back, unfortunately NHL didn't keep the proper statistics. It said that Vancouver was 1-for-0 and the Kraken were 0-for-0 on the power play. So it just felt like the Kraken were always on the power play. But yeah, there is some concern that, guys like McCann, Eberle, and Schwartz, they didn't really generate a lot 5-on-5. They kind of had to come out during the power play. It was more that bottom 6 that was really generating the chances. So that is something to watch. Once again, it's the first game of the preseason. Let's not, start crowning champions here. There's 6 more preseason games and then 82, hopefully more regular season games before you even get to the playoffs here. But that is something to look out for, that first and second line were very quiet 5-on-5 last night.
Yeah, and again with the first preseason game ever, you also got to note that training camp only started 2 days before, so these guys have actually only been on the ice with a coach actually planning for games 2 days prior to this game. So all things considered, it was a fairly good showing. Now on to the goaltending, which you kind of mentioned a bit there. I did not. I don't think any goalie in that game had a 900 save percentage. So it was not the greatest night for goalies. I know Philip Grubauer he had a 714 save percentage, and then Drieger came in and put up an 875 save percentage. So again, it's preseason, first game of the season. But yeah, the goaltending was not up to par that night.
Yeah, and the goals that Vancouver scored were they weren't good goals. Like, you know what, we'll give I think it was Drieger was the one who was in net with the Hoglander goal. That shouldn't have counted, but it's preseason, so they're not going to review it. Like, we'll give Drieger that one because it's a tip. It's a tip from the air, but like the power play goal, Grubauer should have had. The Rathbone goal, that's questionable because it's on a breakaway, but that's a defenseman on a breakaway. So it's not a great sign that these easy goals are going in. Sean?
Should they be reviewing that? I mean, I was watching a bit of the Leafs and the Habs before, and I'm pretty sure they called back a goal that the Leafs scored. So I can't really tell.
Honestly,
crazy about that.
Yeah. At preseason, you know what? If somebody picks the puck up and just throws it into the net, I really don't care. Just get the game over with, kind of.
The headbutt goal, preseason only. Let's bring it.
Exactly. Like, just get the game over with. Make sure that nobody gets hurt. Let's move on to the next one, and let's just get the season started.
Yeah.
In the end, nobody's gonna remember that. You lost a preseason game or you won a preseason game. If you make the playoffs and you go 0-7 in the preseason, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Fair.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot to talk about with that game, and that kind of alludes into our next discussion here, which is a bit more related to the fans rather than the players. What did we think about Sunday's game being? Was it enough to spark this Kraken Canucks rivalry? Did it live up to the hype of this first match between these two very close teams to each other? I honestly, I thought it was a very heavy hitting game. I thought there was actually a few questionable hits, especially from the Canucks that I was kind of wondering about, and the intensity was just incredible that game. It was really a thriller. Again, I mentioned it earlier in the episode that it really felt like a regular season game to me. So what are your thoughts? Do you think this was a good showing for the first Kraken versus Canucks preseason game in history? I'll go to you first, Matthew.
Yeah, I agree with you with the physicality. It was especially the fourth line with Bastian and Shan. That line was quite physical. They hemmed the Canucks in a lot. And for the physicality, it did feel like a regular season game. I wouldn't say that it was sloppy like preseason. Granted, the Canucks didn't have a lot of their main players, and it's going to be interesting to see an actual regular season game with the regular lineups, because this was not even close to what you're going to see in the regular season. Because, the Kraken will have a pretty much a similar lineup, but the Canucks are going to have a lot different, with a lot different players that are going to be putting more pressure, I hope. The Canucks they have a full lineup. They should be putting more pressure, especially if, Pettersson and Hughes are back. It's hard to judge, but for a preseason game, it was pretty good for the physicality. And I'm not sure if it's as intense as what a rivalry would be yet, but it was a good start.
Yeah. And you mentioned seeing the actual NHL lineups for the first time. That'll actually be the Kraken home opener is against Vancouver on October 23rd. So that's going to be awesome. How about you, Sean? What did you think in terms of, was this a good start to the Kraken Canucks rivalry?
Maybe not the first period and change, but by the end of the game, I was literally looking at it. I was like, these guys are ready to go. Like, there were a couple of times I thought that, maybe not in the old NHL where a clean but hard hit wouldn't necessarily constitute a fight, but with the way the NHL is now, I definitely was. If there were other guys, if there was a Curtis Gabriel, a Tom Wilson, a Ryan Reeves, there were going to be hands flying with that. Matthew hit on it before with the Tanev, Bastian, and Sheahan line. Tanev was running around out there. I enjoyed that. He's probably going to end up, if he isn't already, my favorite player on the team. That's my brand of hockey, and he does have more offensive upside than I think his number suggests. I think he was on pace for a career year, if I recall, last year with Pittsburgh. I think it's also an indication that this is going to become a very close team, just based on that. I mean, the more physical you are, the more likely you are that you're going to have to stand up for yourself, and for you guys are going to have to stand up for each other. And that's what brings a close team. And I think that's a really interesting thing to see so early with a bunch of, I don't want to say misfits, because these are decent hockey players. You can only protect 7-3-1 or 8-1. So you're going to lose good guys. But I think that where they may lack in some offensive talent, let me rephrase it. Where they might lack in some offensive firepower, that closeness and that bond, I think, could make up for it. It may not be the most statistically proven, but it's just one of those feelings. No, the best team doesn't always win the Stanley Cup. I've heard from several sources on podcast interviews, it's the closest teams that are going to win. Like, that Blues team might not have been the best team, but they were incredibly, insanely close.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And just a quick one more note on physicality. I saw Jordan Eberle throw the body a little bit directly because of his change in his play style. I credit that to Barry. I don't mean that insultingly. I mean that as a compliment. Credit to Barry Trotz and having to buy into that Islander style. I mean, playing with McDavid, if he played now the last couple of years there, he'd probably be a 60-point, 25 annual goal year guy. Granted, I don't know his statistics the last couple of years offhands, but you could see it's why Barzell isn't a 90, 95-point scorer right now. He could be, but that's winning hockey, clearly. So,
last word on that, Adam. What did you think of last night's rivalry? Beginning to the rivalry.
Well, one of the issues that came out of creating the rivalry is the fact that there weren't, people who from Vancouver who could travel down.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't get that like back and forth in the arena, but there were Canuck fans, because what we have to remember is that the West Coast, Washington State and Portland, a lot of people were Canuck fans for a long time before the Seattle Kraken came in, and especially Spokane with the connection of Travis Green, the head coach. Travis Green is a legend in the Spokane Chiefs history. So, from Vancouver's perspective, it's definitely a rivalry. Like, people were getting fired up for it, but it might take a little bit of time for Seattle to get there, because people are still, building that relationship with the franchise. But by game one, home opener, that rivalry is going to be good to go right from the start.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get to see them go again in preseason. October 5th, they will be visiting Vancouver, so we will see Vancouver fans in the building for that one for sure. One more word, Sean.
What do you guys think, aside from any lineup changes, what do you think the teams will do differently? How do you think they'll try to adjust based on this game for that next matchup? Anything crazy, or just kind of throw out whatever lines you think might fit and let them play?
Well, the Canucks will have a bit better lineup. I'm going to say that right now. They'll probably have a closer to what they will be. October 5th is like, the Canucks will have a pretty good, I'd say at least, hopefully Pettersson's re-signed by then, that he'll be in the lineup. But it'll be a better lineup for the Canucks side. So I think we'll see a better game overall for both. A more competitive game, I'd say, back and forth, I think. Yeah,
and I think from the Kraken, when you're going to, again, that was the first game they've ever actually been on the ice together for, and they only started practicing 2 days before. So I think the more time you give these guys to mesh and bond, and as you mentioned, get closer with each other, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more from them, and we're going to start seeing chemistry develop, and maybe Dave Hackstall messes around with the lines and see what works. I think this preseason is, out of any team, this preseason actually means a lot for the Kraken, in my eyes, because a lot of these guys have never played together before. So this isn't just regular preseason hockey for other established organizations where guys have been playing together for years. This is brand new. This is trying to build fresh chemistry. So we'll see what happens after a bit more practice.
Well, one thing that we also have to consider into this is that by that time, the Kraken should have a pretty good idea of what their roster is going to be like. For those who don't know, WHL is starting up, I believe, this Friday. I think the OHL has already started up. The Q is starting up soon. So those teams are going to want the players back who aren't going to make the team. So by October 5th, you might not have guys like Riker Evans in the lineup anymore. You know, Seattle's second round pick from this year who is in the WHL with the Regina Pats. So we might see a more veteran lineup. It might be an AHL lineup, but you won't see these younger guys necessarily on the 5th. So the game should be a lot tighter in how it's played. And also considering the fact that Vancouver is playing at home, that also changes the lineup. Usually for preseason, teams send their kind of like B squad on the road and their A squad at home. We're seeing it again tonight with Vancouver and Calgary. If you looked at the lineups, one's an AHL lineup, one's an NHL sort of lineup. So this stuff happens. So it should be a closer team to what we're expecting in the NHL, but expect a lot of AHL players or players that we'll see in it's Charlotte, correct? That their AHL affiliate is Charlotte Checkers. Yeah, so expect a lot of players that are going to be on the Checkers this year to be in that game versus Vancouver at Rogers Arena, if I'm not mistaken.
Not only did the Kraken win on the scoreboard, but I think they won the jersey battle too. Not gonna lie, they looked.
The S is a little bit too high. It's like also a little bit too big. It's a weird, like, it's a love-hate relationship, and I don't really know how to describe it, but there's like something off, and it's like slowly driving me a little bit crazy because I can't figure out exactly what is off about it.
Get to the we've been over this, man. Get to their front office. You have a calling. This is it.
The problem is I don't know what's wrong. I just know that there's, you know how like sometimes you sit there and you're like, there's something off here, but I can't figure it out. Like, I don't know if it's just if it's too big or it's not wide enough or it's like not properly. I don't know. There's something off. Yeah.
It is definitely pretty large. I don't really mind it being that big now that I've watched on TV, but I definitely was wondering about it for a little while. It is definitely bigger than most logos on NHL jerseys.
Yeah.
All right, we will reset the show. You're listening to the THW What's Kraken show, hosted by me, Tom Pepper, Sean Raggio, and Adam Kierszenblat. Presented by the Hockey Writers, we talk Seattle Kraken hockey every week on YouTube, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at TomPepper, at Raggio9124, and at Adam Kblat. Also make sure to follow today's special guest, Matthew, at Matthew Zator SC. So Tuesday, which is actually going to be the day this podcast is up, we get to see the Kraken again, which is going to be awesome. I mean, I loved seeing them last night. What a cool experience seeing this team out there for the first time, seeing the jerseys, the uniforms, all these players we've been talking about for months, and just even Seattle hockey in general we've been talking about for years, and it's finally on the ice. So we're going to get to see them go up against the Edmonton Oilers in Edmonton. A notable storyline there is Adam Larsson is going to be potentially in the lineup for the Kraken, and that'll be him going back playing against the team, which was a bit of a surprise for a lot of people that he left and decided to sign in Seattle. So that's going to be interesting. But I'll go to you first, Sean. What are you looking for the Kraken to improve on from last game? What did you like from last game, and what do you think they could improve on against the Oilers?
I think it was Adam who said it, 5-on-5 scoring. I think they really need to improve on that because, you know, power play popping off is great, but those going to come few and far between most of the time. And their penalty kill, everything I've said, everything I've written, bottom six, strong defensive penalty killing. What happens? Gives up a goal. It's like making me look bad. But I definitely think that that's something they'll be shoring up by the start of the season. But I want to see noticeable improvements in that. Granted, I think they were only had one power play against, right?
Which they were scored against on.
Exactly. Even so, I want to see that a bit better. Just two quick things about this upcoming game I want to see. I don't want to see Adam Larson play. To me, that's a regular season type thing. You know, I wouldn't want my first game back to be a preseason game that, you know, he was there for a handful of years. What was it, 5-6 years, right? 4 years maybe.
Something
You know,
like
that's
that, yeah.
you know, they had, you know, their inconsistencies as a team, but I mean, I'm sure he meant a lot to a lot of the guys on that team, especially you get a defensive minded guy, block shots, you know, he's probably loved in that room. You want to go your first game back against the guys you were going to battle with. And my final thought is that last game, it was Giordano, it was Larson, and Schwartz had the A's. I don't know if they're going to just cycle it around or if those guys are going to get it. I always want at least one forward and one defenseman, not all exclusive. And I just thought of this now. I want one guy wearing an A who's the emotional leader, the emotional heartbeat, or maybe even the C. I don't think they should just hand out a C. I think the C chooses themselves, C being captain. But to me, you got to give it to Brandon Tanev. Everyone loves that guy from what I can tell. Whether it's in the room, I'm sure he's a popular voice in that room, let alone the ice. And then another forward and defenseman. I'm not going to elaborate on who I think that forward and defenseman is because I really want to just give that love to Brandon Tanev. I get used to it, guys. I'm going to be talking about him a lot. It's just going to happen. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. He's awesome.
You see that clip from him? Who was it on? Someone on the Canucks was doing their interview, and
it was Rathbone.
In his underwear behind the curtain.
He's trying to sneak behind the curtain.
Oh, I missed that actually. Oh man.
I'll ask you this, Matthew, because you've had a bit more experience in this division. Do you think the Oilers are going to be a tougher test than the Canucks that we saw on Sunday, or do you think this is going to be kind of the same matchup, weaker? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it depends if they play Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in that same game. Mm-hmm. They seem to be wanting to have Zach Hyman with McDavid, and we'll see if McDavid's playing. Yes, it's a tougher test. I was going to say. I mean, the Canucks they had Besser was their biggest star in that game. But you know, McDavid, even if it's just Draisaitl, it's a tougher test for the Kraken defensively. If they're not in the lineup, I'm going to say at least one of them will be in the lineup. So we'll see, unless the Oilers are trying to make sure they don't get hurt. But yeah,
I think it would be
they had
awesome
a pretty good easy time against the Flames last night. So
yeah, I think it would be awesome if McDavid and Draisaitl get in there. I'd love to. I think the Kraken should really get challenged as much as they can in this preseason. I mentioned it earlier how I think this preseason is very important for the Kraken, because this is kind of where you're going to find out, especially the amount of depth signings Ron Francis has made, where it's just like there's so many options for the Kraken here, and there's so many options for guys to break out. And if they're really going to get a shot from the very beginning, they got to prove themselves in preseason here. So it's very unique for this team. But also I'll ask this one to Adam. Do you think we'll get to see some younger players like Riker Evans get a shot, or maybe Joey Decord get some action in net?
Well, I think that they would be smart to play guys like Riker Evans, because this is going to be his only game. You know, another guy, Jacob Mendelin, I believe I'm saying that name right. He was later picked. But yeah, we're going to see guys like William Brogan, Connor Carrick, Jeremy Lazon in this game. So it is going to be a younger team. The problem is that because Seattle is such a new team, they don't have those prospects that they can just throw out there in a preseason game. You know, They don't have that 4 NHL lines, 4 AHL lines, and then 4 prospect lines that a lot of other teams do. So they have to play these veterans. You know, you're going to see like a guy like Jordan Eberle probably play 5 out of 7 games 4 out of the 7 games, when you in normal years you'd see him play 2. So I'm excited to see. You know what? I've seen enough of Joey Daccord, honestly, at this point. Like, I'm not super excited to see him play because I know what he's about. We saw him play for Ottawa these last couple of years. It wasn't great. So at that point, like, unless he has a real shift, he's going to be, I think, the backup for the Checkers, because I don't see Carolina making him their starter, making a starter for I believe Carolina is still the team that owns the Checkers. But anyway,
I
like,
think I might have switched to Florida. I think
yeah, maybe.
Florida
I
now.
know that Carolina was there for a long time, but
Yeah.
guys, like, and then on the offense, you have I'm really excited to see Alex True, because I think that he is going to be a big part of the game versus the Oilers. And to your point, like, I don't see the Oilers playing McDavid. I see them going with a younger lineup as well. So hopefully it's an exciting game, but it's the preseason. Honestly, like, it's always a toss up of what the lineup's going to be like. Yesterday, for Canuck fans, we thought we were going to see Jet Wu. He went down to Spokane. He never played. So sometimes that stuff just happens, and we just have to wait till the I guess the rosters are announced at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm excited to watch more Kraken hockey. I'm sure all Kraken fans everywhere, even just anyone who likes hockey, this is just such an interesting time in hockey history to just see a brand new franchise come in. I mean, we saw it with Vegas back in 2017, but now that the league's at 32 teams, I don't know if we're going to see this for at least a very long time, where we actually have an expansion team. I mean, I could see relocation maybe in the future, but this is history in the making, and we get to witness it. So it's pretty special. We'll also get to see the white jerseys in action against the Oilers. I mean, there was a team scrimmage, but I think it's a little bit more exciting when you go and see them up against actual NHL teams. So we will get a look at those. So I am excited for that. Thanks again, Matthew, for coming on. That was awesome. I'm sure we will have some more discussions, especially in the regular season, on maybe home opener. We can have you on again and discuss that, because this is going to be a really exciting rivalry, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just before we wrap things up, I wanted to say congrats to Alexander Wenberg on the Kraken. Him and his fiance had a child, Rio, on Saturday. So that is awesome. So congrats to them. All right. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of THW What's Kraken. We hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to next week, as we'll be breaking down any Seattle Kraken news and rumors that come up over the next few days. Again, make sure to check out our written work at thehockeywriters.com and follow us on Twitter at Tom Pepper, at Raggio9124, and at Adam K. Blatt. From Tom, Sean, Adam, and Matthew, this has been THW What's Kraken.